video, I will show you a basic file setup for your application. From the previous video, we already had the buttons, form, and search component pieces. In this video, we will be adding a footer, header, and a navigation to our application. In your code editor, I will go ahead and open the app.js file. Here will be the main part of our application. I will be creating the header and the footer. Once again, I will create it using props so that I can have dynamic information passed from the props to the parent element, which would be the app.js file. I will open my terminal, make sure it's directed to the right location, yarn start. Here is a basic app layout. I have the header here that also contains a navigation with some links. This is the main area of the application, and then I also have a footer down below. We will need to go ahead and create the header and footer components. In your component folder, create a folder called header and also one for the footer. If I open the header folder, you can see that I have a CSS file and a JS file. I will open up the JS file. Here I am creating a variable for my header. I will not be using state in my header, so I can use a variable. Once again, this is known as a dummy component. I will call my variable header. The header needs to be capitalized. Any component pieces should always be capitalized in order for it to function correctly. If I wanted a CSS, I would go ahead and import that into the head. Otherwise, I could use the variable down below like I have. In my header component, I will use the header element tag in HTML5. Make sure that you use the proper syntax when possible. I am adding an H1 tag. I will pass something through the props called page title. This will allow me to change the title of the page depending on the placement. I also have another component being injected into my header. I gave that a name of nav. I will close the header and export that out. That's all I need to do to create a header piece. You can actually copy and paste this into your footer components. You will need a footer.js file and a footer CSS file. This one will look very similar to the header that we just created, except for the difference of footer. My component name is footer in this element. I'm also using a footer element tag. In this component piece, I also added an icon from the icon packages, and then I did a copyright, all rights reserved. You may or may not want to put that in a paragraph depending on how you would like to style it. I am using CSS modules to style this component piece as well. You can always use CSS if you choose to. If I go to my app.js file, you can see that I injected my header here. I called the header component. I also called the dynamic prop of page title, and I said my application. That gives me the option to add my application here in the header. You can see then I have a paragraph tag for the main information, and then I imported my footer element as well. Don't forget, anytime you import a component piece, you also have to import it in the head with the file location. Import header from the header folder, import footer from the footer folder. One last thing, you can see here that I actually have a navigation to the right, and it does have 3 links on it as well. I did create a new component for the navigation. In the navigation folder, I have 2 files. Once again, the CSS and the JS file. The navigation will also be a dummy component. I will not need to use state. Here you can see constant nav. I am using a navigation element. I'm injecting 3 of our button components, and I'm giving them names of home, link 2, and link 3. I styled it once again using a variable down below. Let me go back to my header so that you can see how I injected that. I have an H1 tag, then I injected the navigation component. I also imported that in the head as well. This is a basic file structure for most applications. You may need to change this depending upon how you want to style your application. But for the most part, this should work for you.